Through thousands of years of human history and hundreds of years of political measurement, I think this statement is still as solidly true as the first time it was spoken, and that is, power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. Really, all that is a measurement of saying anytime someone gains power, whether it's political power or it's business power or it's financial power or it's relationship power, power is probably the most intoxicating, enticing, misleading drug of all. Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast, 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. If you have been given any sort of power, whether it's because you won the local election as dog catcher or you've been appointed to a position of significant influence in a corporation or a nonprofit organization, you run the risk of being tempted to do what you are not talented to do, not told to do, not appointed to do, not assigned to do. It's altogether possible, regardless of how wonderful a person you are, that the intoxication of power itself will draw you to do things that you would have never thought in a million years you would do. Now, that power has an unusual intoxication, not only on the person in the position of power, but it has an unusual intoxication on the people around them. Now, some people will find that that position of power, that position of influence, whether it's just purely based on wealth, or it's based on fame, or it's based on political prowess. Our pastors and CEOs have the same problem when it comes to power. If they're not careful, if they don't guard their heart and their mind, others will come alongside them, pat them on the back, tell them how wonderful they are. All the while, the person patting them on the back has a knife in the other hand. All the while, the person patting them on the back really has their own agenda in mind, and they only want to use that CEO, that pastor, that leader, that government leader, that politician. They only want to use them for greater manipulation. And there are all sorts of nefarious activities that lie behind that kind of manipulation. When you have money, you have power. When you have voice, like a platform with 1 million followers on a social media platform, you have power. When you have the influence of celebrity, because you've been in movies or you've been in TV or you've been on the platform and people recognize your name and your face, all of those are different forms of power, but all of them are intoxicating. They're intoxicating to the person with the power because the person with the power now feels like, I can get more done, I can get more said, I can get more people to come along my way to do what I want them to do. I can persuade them. A good example of this is the number of people who've done incredible movies and performed incredible music, and suddenly they have an opinion when it comes to politics or medicine or world economies. Now, that doesn't mean they're experts in that, but they do have an opinion in it. And I'm not saying their opinion is wrong. I'm just saying that intoxication of power thinks, well, if I have this much influence that I can fill the box office, if I have so much influence that I can fill the ballot box, if I have so much influence, I mean, goodness, look at my followers, look at my bank accounts, surely I'm a success. That intoxication of power also means they feel like they should use that influence to express their opinions and gain other people to the same opinion. The scary part is that intoxication of power sometimes means that the manipulation of the masses is even easier. The manipulation of the masses only for the purpose of having the power. If you do a deep dive into the rise of power of people like Stalin or Mussolini or Hitler, what you see is a lot of sycophantic behavior around their charisma, around their personality. Well, it's the same thing for David Koresh or others who have built phenomenal cults based on charisma. That charisma gave them influence. That influence gave them power. That power gave them corruption. And ultimately, we all run the risk as we strive to build our business, as we strive to gain more influence, as we strive to gain more wealth in this world, we run the risk of serving that wealth, that influence, that business, rather than serving the people around us. We run the risk of being intoxicated by the power. And again, sometimes that's not our own internal intoxication. It's the intoxication of the power of the people around us. A lot of people have said this is an old story of Monica Lewinsky, that part of her fascination with the relationship she encountered and positions of power was strictly based on the influence and the power of the position and the opportunity. That it was less an attraction and more of an intoxication to power. And I think there are a lot of people who found themselves in a very similar position, intoxicated by the power of a business leader, intoxicated by the power of a pastor, of an organizational leader. We see it every day in the news media that people have fallen from high positions of power because they've had affairs, or they've been bribed, or they've been manipulated. I saw just the other day a judge being dragged out of her own court in handcuffs because she was found guilty of corruption. She had been bribed. She had been manipulated. And we see it all over the place. It's the reason Jeffrey Epstein was able to get away with what he got away with, because power is intoxicating. And he was able to get enough people with enough power to play his little game and then hold it over their heads. See, that's why we have to guard our hearts as leaders, because as we learn the tools of influence, as we learn the way to build power, to build relationships, to build impact in our communities, if we don't have ourselves in check, if we don't have our hearts and our minds guarded, we will find ourselves intoxicated by the same power, by the same influence, to be led astray, to be brought into ideas that are not our own, to be influenced by ideas that are not our own, because, well, they might bring more power or more influence or more income. And that's a real danger. The solution is accountability. The solution is being under authority. The solution is realizing there will never be a day when you're the final authority. So long as you're human, flesh and blood, you will never be the final authority. And if you forget that, if you forget that a judgment day is coming, it may not be in court. You may never go to prison. We know world leaders who've killed literally millions of people and never stood trial for it. Literally millions of people and never stood trial for it. Just go back and watch some of the stuff that's on Netflix right now about the Nazi Party and the inner circle around Hitler, or the special units that were built to exterminate the Jews and the unwanted non-Germans all over Europe. Millions of people slain, less than 300 ever went to trial. Can 300 people kill millions? No. But they can recruit and train and influence thousands or hundreds of thousands of others to do the work. But they never stood trial. But I'm a firm believer that we will all stand in judgment one day, and it will be far beyond the courts of this world. It will be far beyond the judgment of man. There will be a price to pay for corruption. And that price to pay will be high. So while you're building your business and you're thinking to yourself, I just want to get to the next income bracket. While you're building your influence and you're thinking to yourself, I just want to get to the next 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 5 million followers on my social media. While you're building your power base and you're thinking, I just want to win the next level election. Not dog catcher, but maybe, I don't know, city council. Maybe not city council, but I don't know, state rep or governor. I want to work my way up. At every level, you run the greater risk because power is intoxicating. And with every level of influence, every level of income, every level of power, political power or business power, the intoxication is worse. The intoxication is more appetizing, more tempting, and more devastating if that corruption gets into your heart and mind. You can be misled, and you can be drawn away from what your original intent was. And if the only thing you're seeking is more power, more influence, and more income, then the intoxication has an even greater stronghold on you if you're not doing it based on values. It'll be easy to lead you astray because all somebody's got to do is tempt you with more influence, more income, and more power. As a leader at any level, just remember, the student body president in high school, the head cheerleader, the football or basketball or soccer team captain, they all have the same challenge. Once you're in that position that people recognize your influence, they will want to use your influence for their benefit, and that makes you a potential victim of corruption. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.